is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Easy Crochet Mini Wallet, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description, or you can simply search mooglyblog.com Easy Crochet Mini Wallet, and it should pop right up with that written pattern as well as the right and left-handed video tutorials. To make this pattern, we'll be using 50 yards of Bernat Softee cotton in 2 colors. That's 50 yards total, so you can make quite a bit from 2 skeins. And you can use, of course, whichever colors you like. We'll also be using a 3.75 millimeter or USF crochet hook. This one is by Susan Bates, as well as our usual crochet supplies: stitch markers, yarn needle, and scissors. This pattern calls for a couple of special extras, though. We've got buttons that you can see right here. I used just one of these buttons, picked up at my local craft store. If you like, you can attach a lanyard or a keychain. Really, you can add whatever you like to this pattern. And then, if you do want to add the grommet, as seen here, you'll need, of course, grommets and a hammer. The grommet, however, is optional, so if you don't want to add that, you don't have to. First, let's take a quick look at the finished Easy Crochet Mini Wallet. The Easy Crochet Mini Wallet is a great pattern for beginners because we're really only working in single crochets. We're making a single simple rectangle in one color, set that aside. Then we make a larger rectangle with a little bit of tab at the end. We add a little bit of space in there, or rather leave a little bit of space. And then, as I say, you can add the grommet or not add the grommet. It's up to you. I do think a grommet would help it last a little bit longer. While we're making that border around our final piece, we're attaching the front piece here, working through both layers, and we're adding a little bit of a little loop here so you can add your button. And of course, you can add whatever style of button you like. You can make the button longer for bigger buttons, smaller for smaller buttons, whichever you prefer, because the button, of course, is going to add a lot of life and personality to your pouch. Inside, you've got plenty of room for cards, cash, whatever you need to carry securely. And as I say, you can then add it to a lanyard or a key ring or whatever you like. So first, we make piece 1 for our Easy Crochet Mini Wallet in our first color, or color A. For this, I'm using the golden color, but you can use, of course, whichever color you like. We're going to start by making a slip knot. So we go ahead and lay our yarn over in a loop here, pull that string right behind, pull that loop through from the middle, and we have our slip knot. If you need a more detailed explanation of that, I do have a separate tutorial here on YouTube. We want to adjust that loop to be about the size of our hook, and then we're going to chain 15. We yarn over and pull through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 times. So we have a chain of 15. Then we're going to skip the chain closest to the hook, which is this one right here, and single crochet in each remaining chain to the end. I recommend that you work into the back humps of the chain, which you'll find back here, rather than under the top V, as most beginners do. I find working under this back hump will add a nicer edge when we go to add our pieces together. So we're going to skip that back hump closest to our hook and move on to the next one. Insert our hook, yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2 to make our first single crochet. And we continue to do that in each chain across. Insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2 to finish our stitch. That's 2 single crochets. Let's do a couple more. Insert your hook in the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2 to finish. One more. Insert your hook, yarn over and pull up your loop, yarn over and pull through 2. So continue doing that in each chain across, and at the end of the row, you should have a total of 14 single crochets. So this is what it should look like at the end of row 1. Rows 2 through 20 are all the same. We're going to start with a chain 1, so we yarn over and pull through to chain 1, and that's our turning chain. Then we turn, and we want to single crochet in each stitch across. This time, of course, we're going under both of those top 2 loops. So we insert our hook in the first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over and pull through 2 for our first single crochet, just as we did before. And then, as I say, we continue to do that in each stitch across. Right now, I'm making row 2, but I will just repeat exactly what I did here to begin row 2 and work across until I have a total of 20 rows. So we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till you've made 20 rows of single crochet, each with 14 stitches. So I'll see you when we get to that point. So here you can see piece 1 inside the wallet, but it's just those rows of 14 stitches, 20 in total. After you've made that piece, you can go ahead and break your yarn or cut your yarn and finish it off. Then we're going to want to add a button. I added my button approximately between rows 18 and 19, kind of right here, sewed it right there, along with some of the matching thread. But of course, you can move that up or down if you're using a bigger button and adjust it for the size of your button. After you've applied the button to this rectangle, you simply set it aside, and then we'll begin on piece 2. Piece 2 begins exactly like piece 1. We start with a chain of 15, skip the chain closest to the hook, and single crochet in the remaining stitches across for a total of 14 single crochets in each row. Instead of working to 20, we work to 21 rows, but then we don't break the yarn, we've still got to add our little tab. For demonstration purposes here, I've worked 5 rows. Again, you should work a total of 21. Then we move on to row 22, so let's make that together. We're going to start with our turn and chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in the first 2 stitches. 1, 2. After that, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And you'll want to keep those chains just a little bit loose because we are going to crochet back into them. Then we skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and single crochet in the 2 stitches after that. So 1, 2, 3, we skip, we find that next one, insert our hook right there. 1 single crochet, and then a single crochet in the next stitch. And these are all the stitches we'll make in row 22. The rest of these stitches remain unworked, which means we just leave them alone until we come back and work into them for our border. So we have one more row for piece 2, row 23. To begin row 23, we start with a chain 1 and turn, or again, turn and chain 1, and then we single crochet in each stitch and chain across. So we single crochet in the single crochets, there's 1 and 2, and then we want to single crochet in each one of these chains. That's why I instructed you to make sure they aren't too tight. If you made them too tight, and for some reason you don't want to pull them back out and make them a little bit looser, you could crochet into this chain space, but if you crochet into the individual chains, for this project, it will give a slightly nicer look. Other projects, it does make more sense to work into that chain space. But for this one, if you can, try and get into each one of those little chains. If you can't, just work 3 single crochets right into that chain space. Finally, we've got 2 more single crochets right here at the end. There's 1 and 2. Oh, didn't get under both loops there. We always want to make sure we get under both of those loops on top of the stitch. There we go. And that is our final stitch for piece 2. But we don't want to break the yarn. We're going to be making our border in this color and attaching our 2 pieces together. Now here we've got our 2 pieces so far. As you can see, I didn't make these full size. I made piece 1 with just 4 rows and piece 2 with 5 rows before we added our little few rows here for the tab. But again, you should have 20 and 21 rows plus the 2 rows for the tab there on your finished pieces. This is just for demo purposes. So after you finish piece 2 and you're ready to start with the assembly, notice at the end of 23, or row 23 rather, we do turn. So this is the right side of our work here. Whatever row you finished off on for your piece 1, that'll be your right side right there. So we want, or excuse me, for row 20. So what we want to do is lay piece 1 right on top of piece 2. They should be the same length here. And you can see there's 1 row less on piece 1. Remember, we worked to 20 rows. This one we worked to 21 rows before the tab. So you want to have 1 row showing on top here on the back on piece 2. So we just lay those right over the top of each other. And then this is where we want to use our stitch markers. And of course, for a real one, I would have already woven in these ends, but for now, we're just going to let those hang out there. We want to match up these rows along the side. If you look really closely, you can see how they sort of look the same there along the side. We've got the same lumps and bumps, if you will. So when you match those up, you can use your stitch markers to sort of hold those together. So when we go to seam these two pieces together, they'll be held together just so. Of course, on your full-size one, you'll have a lot more rows here along the side you can match up. And then across the bottom, they should match up stitch for stitch. So let me just pull up that loop a little bit so I can put this hook down. Let's come over here to the other side. It's along the sides that it's really going to be important to try and match those up. You can see again, look for those sort of same shapes right along the side there. And then you can just use your stitch markers to hold those bumps right together so that when we crochet through the sides of our pieces, they'll match up perfectly. There we are. And with that, again, you should weave in your ends before you begin here, although not this one is still attached. We'll be ready to add our round 1 border. Okay, so once you've got your pieces all connected, it's time to begin that round 1 border and edging that'll hold everything together, and we'll add our button loop. So the first thing we need to do is simply slip stitch across our last row here to get ourselves to the other side of this tab. We don't need to add any height here or anything. We're just slip stitching right along. So we're going to slip stitch in each of one of these stitches for row 23 until we get to the end here. There we are. And then when we get to that final stitch, we're simply going to chain 1. And then we are going to slip stitch in the sides of the rows of the tabs. Remember, that was just 2 rows, the one where we chained and skipped, and then the one where we worked into the chains. So we only need 2 slip stitches here along the side. You can work those wherever you like on the sides of those rows. We're just trying to sort of travel with our hook down here. There we are. And then that brings us back to those unworked stitches of row 21. So the first thing we want to do is slip stitch in that first unworked stitch, that first stitch right there. We insert our hook and make our slip stitch. Then we're going to be making the chain that makes up our button loop. Remember, we'll have sewn our button on down here on piece 1. So if you're using a different sized button than the buttons I used, again, for reference, here are the ones I used. These are, let's see here, 7/8 of an inch or 22 millimeter, then you may need to adjust the size of this chain loop, which is why we want to have that button sewn on already. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 12, and I'm going to chain relatively tightly because I'm not going to be working back into those chains. And again, I know that's the size that works for my button, but you can chain whatever length necessary for the button that you've chosen. Just go ahead and after we connect it here, test it out a couple times before you cut your yarn and weave in your ends. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I needed one more. There's my chain of 12. And then what we're going to do is slip stitch in that same stitch. So right in that stitch we slip stitched to before, we just want to go ahead and put another slip stitch right in there. There we are. And then now that that's attached, you can go ahead and set down your hook if needed and check that out and make sure that's going to be the right size for your button. After that, we slip stitch in each remaining stitch across here from row 21. Again, we don't need to add height at this point, so we're just traveling with our hook, getting to where we need to be next. So we slip stitch in each of these stitches here until we get to the end of row 21 of piece 2. There we are. And now here we are at this corner. What we're going to do here is chain 1 again. And now we are going to sort of treat that chain 1 as a turning chain. And we are going to single crochet down the side here. So this is where we want to make sure that we were matched up really well. Now remember, we've got 21 rows here and 20 rows here. So we're going to go ahead and work in the side of this first row. We know there's not a matched up row right there. So we can just single crochet right in there. But now we know that this next row is where we want to start having these 2 pieces together. And we can really hold those together and see how those match up. So now when you come to that section with the piece 1 on top, we want to make sure that when we single crochet in the sides of each of those rows, we're single crocheting through both of those layers. So we insert our hook along the side through both of those layers, yarn over and pull up our loop, and simply finish that single crochet. And then we can continue to work down the side. Since these are single crochet rows, I recommend that you work 1 single crochet into the side of each row. I find that this gives me the best seam that lays flat, doesn't have too many stitches, doesn't have too few stitches, and it just works out really nicely. So crocheting to the side can take a little bit of practice. The main thing is you want to be consistent. So if you see a certain set of bumps, you work into it one way. Next time you see that set of bumps, you work into it the same way. I've come all the way down here to the end because I've just got my little sample, but we just continue crocheting through both of those layers, crocheting them together right along the side until you come to the bottom. Here we've got our foundation chains, and I did add just a couple of stitch markers to help hold those together. Now that we're here, we're going to chain 1 again. Oop, there we go. And then we're simply going to single crochet through both of those matching stitches. Again, match up your stitches from piece 1 and piece 2, go through both layers, and make your single crochet. I want to make sure we get through all my stitch there. Let me redo that one. Pull that one out. Got a little wonky. Happens sometimes. Make sure we've still got our chain 1 there. We do. Go through both layers. There we go. And make our single crochet. And then we simply continue to work right across the bottom. Again, this is one of the reasons I love working into that back hump. You can see now we've got these 2 stitches right here, or rather 2 loops to work under for each of these stitches. And it just creates a really nice finished edge. You can go ahead again and remove your stitch markers as you go, as needed, and continue to single crochet along the bottom. When you get to this side, or corner rather, you chain 1 again, and then simply continue to single crochet up the side. Add your next single crochet right there, work your way up, chain 1, and then you can join to that very first slip stitch you made. And then your pouch will be all connected. All that's left to do is add the grommet. So once you've got all the crocheting done, it's time to add that grommet to the hole we created in row 22, piece 2. If you do not want to add the grommet, you don't have to. You can simply attach your keychain or whatever to this hole. But adding a grommet will prevent wear and tear on your crochet. So most grommet kits come with all the pieces you need other than the hammer. You will have to provide that yourself. What we're going to need today is this little piece right here, which sort of forms a little table. Again, these may have official names. I don't know them, but I'm just going to sort of call them what they are. This is the little table that we'll be doing our pounding on. And these are the pieces of the grommet. I want you to look closely and see there are 2 different shapes here. There's one that's sort of just a little ring, and then one that has this collar on it. This is the one you want to be in front of your project. This little ring goes in back. If we look closely, hopefully you can see too, there are little ridges on one side, and the other side is more smooth. We want the ridge side against our project. So let's go ahead and set this up. First things first, we want to take the ring with the collar on it and put it through from the front of our project so we can make sure that this good side shows on the front. Then we can go ahead and flip it over, and we're going to take that other little ring here, the thin one, and make sure that the rough side is facing down. We want that facing down into our project. That will help grip. Then what we're going to do is take the whole thing right side down and put it right on top of our little table here. And it fits right in a groove there at the top of the table so it's nice and secure. With everything all lined up, we take this little tool right here, and we're going to insert that right in the center of the grommet. This is a pretty hefty little piece. It's got some weight to it, so it'll slip right down in there and stand up really nicely on its own. Finally, we take our hammer and we want to whack it with a few good whacks. We'll see how many of these still end up in the video. Okay, so after a few whacks, I always like to go ahead and just sort of gently pull it apart and check and make sure it's secured and that there aren't any uneven edges. If you spot a place where it hasn't quite come together, you can always put it back in and whack it a few more times. Finally, after all the hammering, you can take that piece out, set it aside, take away the little table and set it aside, and your grommet should be nice and attached and ready to go. And that's how to crochet the Easy Crochet Mini Wallet. Again, that's a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com, along with the right and left-handed video tutorials. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.